Andrea Bargnani, not a center, plays on the perimeter, and he will develop.
Andrea Bargnani, born October 26, 1985. In the summer of 2006, the NBA was at a crossroads. The league was still dominated by giants who thrived in the paint, a world of Shaq's unstoppable force and Tim Duncan's fundamental brilliance. Yet the Toronto Raptors, a franchise desperate for a new identity, took a gamble on something different. Andrea Bargnani, a 7-footer from Italy who could shoot from deep and stretch the floor. This was a bold move. Bargnani wasn't just the first pick of the draft, he was the first European player ever selected number 1 overall, a symbol of a new era in basketball that wasn't quite ready for him. But as the years passed, that promise of change never materialized. Bargnani wasn't a traditional big man, but the league's perception of him was trapped in tradition. The Raptors, unsure of how to use him, tried to mold him into a low-post presence, force-feeding him the ball with his back to the basket, an approach that never matched his strengths. The weight of being a number 1 pick became a curse, a title that demanded dominance, leadership, and results he wasn't built to provide. Critics were relentless, fans grew impatient, and even his brief flashes of brilliance were quickly forgotten beneath the shadow of that first overall label. In a different era, Bargnani could have been celebrated as a valuable stretch big, a player who could space the floor and create mismatches. But in the mid-2000s, a 7-footer was still expected to rebound, block shots, and play with aggression, 3 things Bargnani never consistently delivered. As the years wore on, the narrative around him solidified. He was a bust, a wasted pick, a European experiment gone wrong, but the truth was more complex. Bargnani wasn't without talent. His scoring touch, smooth jumper, and ability to stretch defenses were all real. Yet the combination of unfair expectations, constant mismanagement, and the relentless pressure of being the number 1 pick buried whatever hope he had of a successful NBA career. Even as the league shifted toward the very style he could have thrived in, Bargnani was already too far gone, broken by criticism, lost in a role that never fit him, and forever chained to a legacy that wasn't his to control. This is the story of Andrea Bargnani, how a player built for the future became a victim of the past. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Andrea Bargnani was a 7-foot power forward center from Rome, Italy. Growing up, he developed a love for basketball in a country more known for its passion for soccer. By his late teens, Bargnani's unique combination of size and shooting touch made him a rising star in the European basketball scene. He joined Benetton Treviso, one of Italy's top clubs, and quickly established himself as one of Europe's brightest young talents. In 2006, after a standout season where he showcased his perimeter skills, Bargnani declared for the NBA draft. His combination of height, shooting, and agility made him an intriguing prospect, and the Toronto Raptors, under new general manager Brian Colangelo, saw in him a chance to revolutionize their franchise. Bargnani was selected first overall, becoming the first European player in NBA history to be drafted number 1, a monumental decision that set the stage for his complicated career. Stunt number 1, the curse of expectations. From the moment Andrea Bargnani's name was called as the first overall pick in the 2006 NBA draft, his fate was sealed. The weight of being the number 1 pick is a burden even the most talented prospects struggled to carry, but for Bargnani it was suffocating. As the first European player ever selected at the top spot, he wasn't just representing himself, he was the face of a bold, untested idea that a 7-foot European player with a smooth jumper could transform an NBA franchise. But the NBA world was unforgiving. In a league still obsessed with the traditional big man, Bargnani's skills were viewed through a distorted lens. His scoring touch and range were supposed to be assets, but they quickly became points of criticism. Fans grew frustrated with his reluctance to play physical basketball, to rebound with authority, to dominate the paint like the Shaqs and Duncans of the era. Every defensive misstep was amplified because of the title he carried, white European number 1 overall pick. Toronto's attempts to force him into the role of a traditional center only made things worse. Coaches wanted him to be a low-post threat, to use his size to bully defenders, but that wasn't who he was. Bargnani wasn't a bruiser, he was a finesse player, a shooter, a player built for spacing the floor, not crashing the boards. Yet every year, the pressure to become something he wasn't grew stronger, pushing him further away from his natural game. Instead of being allowed to develop in a role that suited his talents, Bargnani became a prisoner of expectations. He wasn't just a player struggling to adjust, he was a number 1 pick, failing to meet impossible standards. Stunt number 2, misfit in Toronto. If the weight of expectations was one burden Andrea Bargnani couldn't escape, the constant mismanagement in Toronto was another. After drafting him number 1 overall, the Raptors had a clear vision, turned Bargnani into the centerpiece of their franchise. But their methods betrayed their intentions. Instead of building around his unique skill set as a 7-footer with range, they tried to force him into a role he was never suited for, a traditional big man. Coaches shifted Bargnani between power forward and center, often asking him to do things that clashed with his natural abilities. They wanted him to bang in the paint, defend elite post players, and anchor their defense, all tasks that highlighted his weaknesses instead of his strengths. Rather than embracing his ability to stretch the floor and score from the perimeter, they tried to make him something he wasn't, a dominant inside presence. The result was a player trapped in a constant identity crisis, never knowing exactly what the team wanted from him. Beyond the tactical misuse, there was also a lack of stability. Bargnani's time in Toronto was marked by coaching changes, roster overhauls, and conflicting philosophies. One season he was a floor spacing forward, the next he was expected to be a low post enforcer. One coach would encourage his offensive freedom while another would demand defensive discipline and rebounding he simply wasn't built for. Even when Bargnani had flashes of brilliance like his 21.4 points per game in the 2010-11 season, it wasn't enough. Critics always pointed to his defensive struggles, his lack of rebounding, and his perceived lack of toughness. Toronto never truly understood how to maximize his talent, instead highlighting his flaws and leaving him to shoulder the blame for the team's failures. In Toronto, Bargnani wasn't just a player, he was a failed experiment in a franchise not ready to get the best out of him. Stunt number 3, a generation too early. Andrea Bargnani's fate wasn't just sealed by expectations or Toronto's mismanagement, it was also a product of timing. As a 7-footer who could shoot from deep, he was a prototype for the modern NBA, a league that would soon embrace the concept of stretch bigs. But Bargnani's prime came too soon, in an era still dominated by back-to-the-basket big men and bruising interior play. The NBA simply wasn't ready for a player like him. When Bargnani entered the league in 2006, traditional centers like Shaquille O'Neal, Dwight Howard, and Tim Duncan were the league's dominant forces. Teams built their offenses around low-post scoring and expected their big man to protect the rim, rebound, and control the paint. Bargnani's ability to step outside and shoot should have been an asset, but instead it became a target for criticism. Fans and analysts labeled him as soft, a big man who refused to play big. Imagine Victor Wembanyama coming into the league in 2006. He'd be labeled soft too, and likely criticized because he didn't possess a dominant post game. The irony is that just a few years after Bargnani's decline, the NBA would fully embrace the very style of play he embodied. Stretch bigs became a necessity. Players like Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Love, and even Kristaps Porzingis flourished as floor-spacing bigs who could shoot and create mismatches. Had Andrea Bargnani entered the league even 5 years later, his offensive skill set would have been celebrated, not criticized. But by the time the league's philosophy caught up, Bargnani was already broken, physically from injuries, mentally from the relentless criticism, and emotionally from the failure to live up to the impossible standards set for him. His career wasn't just stunted, it was mistimed. The NBA eventually became a league perfectly suited for players like Bargnani, but for him it was already too late. All in all, Andrea Bargnani's NBA journey was defined by expectations he could never escape. As the first European #1 pick, he became a symbol of change in a league not ready for his skill set. Toronto saw him as a franchise savior but misused him, forcing him into a traditional big man role that exposed his weaknesses. His scoring touch and shooting were ignored, while his lack of rebounding and defense became constant targets of criticism. Yet beyond the mismanagement, timing was his biggest enemy. A 7-footer who could shoot should have thrived, but he played in an era that valued size over skill. By the time the NBA embraced the stretch big, Bargnani's confidence and career were already shattered. He was a player who never stood a chance, but would I call him a bust? Certainly not. Salute, much respect. But for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.